Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox and I'd like to welcome you to episode 180 of the FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report. Today I am extraordinarily pleased to announce my FCPA Masterclass training. In this episode I discuss what the training will entail, who should attend the training, why this FCPA Masterclass training will be different than other trainings that are currently available on the market, and really what you will gain from this and why you should attend. The episode comes in at just over 15 minutes. I think you'll find it informative. You can go to my website, Advanced Compliance Solutions, under FCPA Masterclass and get more information, or you can give me a shout. Either give me a call or shoot me an email at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you will attend my FCPA Masterclass training. Thank you. Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox and I would like to welcome you to this episode of the FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report. Today I'm very thrilled to visit with you about something that I've been thinking about for a long time and wanted to implement, and I'm finally pleased to announce my first FCPA Masterclass training. Many people have asked me over the years if I would put on FCPA training. I've done so just a couple of times. But this past spring, I taught a course online at Widener University on FCPA and compliance-related topics, and that sort of got my juices going to put on some formal FCPA training. I hope to fill a gap that I see in training for compliance practitioners, and that's in the doing of compliance. So my master class will be about the doing of compliance. How do you do it inside of a corporation? Obviously, there are others that talk about the law, the background of the FCPA, and give broader focus than simply on the doing of compliance. But I think that's where, for the compliance practitioner, the rubber meets the road. So that's what I'm going to focus on in my training. Each training session will be a 2-day training, and the first day will be pretty heavy on what's required in a best practices compliance program. I hope to be able to bring in some guest speakers from time to time to highlight some specific issues that they may have expertise in. But if you've ever heard me talk, you know that I am quite a dynamic speaker, and that dynamicism will be brought to my training. I'm going to use a variety of social media and other media techniques. Obviously, I'll be speaking. You'll receive written materials. You'll also see videos, and perhaps we can Skype in some individuals for training, but it will be unique, it will be dynamic, and it will be something that you as the FCPA compliance practitioner can utilize going forward. It's designed to give you the tools to create, implement, or enhance a best practices compliance program. The first training will be on September 10th and 11th here in Houston, Texas, my hometown. I thought that would be an appropriate place to begin this training, and I'm going to have it every couple of months or every quarter or so. I'll be announcing my next locations going forward. But I wanted to go into a little bit of detail about what I'm going to cover. First of all, you will have a very thorough understanding of what the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, the FCPA, requires. In addition, a review of the UK Bribery Act and selected other international anti-corruption enforcement efforts. We'll review international legislation, including the OECD 13 Good Practices, the UN Convention Against Bribery, and I previously mentioned the UK Bribery Act. We'll talk about the corporate responsibility and the reporting structures within the FCPA, what you need to put in place and how you need to put in place, how to establish a robust and efficient anti-corruption compliance program. Certainly, enforcement actions will be a part of this training going forward. There are lessons learned in every enforcement action, and as many of you know, I write about them on a continual basis and provide those lessons learned for the compliance practitioners through my blog and my podcast, Well, if you attend the FCPA Masterclass, you'll get that training in person. But we'll certainly look at prior enforcement actions and how that might guide your thought process in creating, implementing, and enhancing your compliance program. We'll also take a look at opinion releases. There's a lot of information in those opinion releases which can be utilized for specific areas of FCPA compliance. I will discuss the sources and the extent of hospitality guidelines that you need to take a look at. And we'll also take a look at internal controls. Not a lot of FCPA training looks at internal controls because of the Securities and Exchange Commission's very vigorous enforcement of the books and the accounting provisions, which of course includes books and records and internal controls. I'm going to take a look at internal controls, and you'll learn how to map your internal controls to the COSO 2013 framework. So when the regulators come knocking in the form of the Securities and Exchange Commission, you'll be able to show them that not only have you implemented internal controls, effective internal controls, you've mapped them to your compliance program, and you've also tested against those, which is the important thing in any internal control regime. So some of the key areas that I'm going to cover. Well, I mentioned the international fight against corruption, and clearly we have the UK Bribery Act, we have the recent Brazilian Act, the Clean Companies Act, but we also have domestic anti-corruption enforcement, and that's best cited to by the GlaxoSmithKline case in China. Also, the recent FIFA bribery scandal, I think, is going to put a bigger spotlight on international bribery and corruption. So we'll take a look at those. The prevalence of corruption in international business transactions. We'll, of course, talk about the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index and how to utilize that going forward. And the overall rise in anti-corruption enforcement across the globe now, led by the United States. We'll certainly have an introduction to the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, an overview of the FCPA, who is subject to the FCPA, what are the elements of a bribery violation, do you have to actually pay a bribe, or can you simply offer a bribe, who is a foreign official. Here we'll look at the Esquenazi decision for those factors, the key decision. There are just less than 5 important, or even less than 5 reported cases involving the FCPA, and the Esquenazi case is a seminal case because it defines who is a foreign official in the instrumentality prong, and of course that includes state-owned enterprise employees. What are your responsibilities under the theory of vicarious liability for the actions of third parties? The books and records provisions, the internal controls provisions. What are the roles of the Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission? We'll take a look at penalties. We'll take a look at jurisdiction. And as I mentioned, I'm certainly going to review enforcement history and trends. In the biggest area of FCPA exposure is generally recognized as third party. So we'll have significant discussions and learning about dealing with third parties. It's relatively straightforward if you take the approach that I advocate, which is the life cycle management of third parties using my 5-step approach. But in addition to learning those 5 steps in detail, we'll talk about third-party provisions in contracts. We'll look at agents and consultants, then flip it around to third parties who might have come in through your supply chain, customs brokers and freight forwarders. Obviously, we'll look at sales partners, joint venture partners, other third parties, risk assessments for third parties. How do you perform due diligence? How do you manage a relationship through risk mitigation tools? And what are audit rights? We will take a look at risk assessments. How do you do a risk assessment? Who do you talk to for a risk assessment? What should go into a risk assessment? That will, and then how do you use a risk assessment going forward? Some of the specifics we'll get into on the policies are around gifts, entertainment, and travel. When is it responsible for you to provide benefits to foreign government officials? When are you going to get in trouble for that? How do you document that? What are reasonable expenses versus bribery? What are establishing appropriate, or how do you establish appropriate business justifications, and how do you deal with per diems? And most importantly, how do you document all of this? We're going to talk about charitable donations and political contributions. Many companies have gotten into trouble for their charitable donation policies and programs. How does a corporate social responsibility program, a CSR, overlap with your FCPA responsibilities, and indeed your FCPA program is an important part of any international business effort, because you're going to have a CSR component to your operations and you're going to be expected to engage in this. What about facilitation payments? Does your company allow facilitation payments? How do you carve out the facilitation payments which you cannot make through your UK subsidiary or for your United Kingdom employees wherever they are in the world? What about if you have contracts with English companies who are subject to the Bribery Act? How do you deal with all that? How do you deal with that administratively? So what are some of the practical elements that we'll go over? Obviously, the ubiquitous tone at the top is something that many people are familiar with, but how do you drive the tone from the top down into the middle and indeed to the bottom of your organization? What does the Department of Justice expect regarding staffing and budgets? What can you do to really help cut back on the complexity of your compliance program, making it simpler and then driving it into the DNA of your company? What are some of the more effective tools for accountability of employees? And what should you do for training? How should you put training on? How do you test training? And how do you document all of that going forward? We'll have a subject or a session on technology and the use of technology in your FCPA compliance program. Should you use continuous monitoring? Should you do transactional monitoring? How should you put in your third parties into a technological tool? What are the ways you can save time and money by using technology in your FCPA compliance program? So as you can see from this description, I'm going to be able to cover a wide variety of topics within the context of doing compliance. And I think what you'll find is if you attend this, you'll be presented with a way to think about the FCPA that you haven't been presented before. Certainly there are companies that put on FCPA training around their conferences, but what I think you find is that it's either a day before or half a day before or half a day after some class that really doesn't have enough time to get into the true nuts and bolts of how do you create an effective compliance program, but because they don't really talk about the doing of compliance. And that's going to be the difference in what I bring, the actual doing of compliance. I hope that this will interest you. The pricing will certainly be competitive with anyone's training that's available. And all of that information is available on my website, advancedcompliancesolutions.com. So if you'll type that in, you'll go to my FCPA Masterclass. If you have any questions about any of this, I hope that you would give me a call or shoot me an email. You can email me at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. So with that, I'm really excited to be able to bring this FCPA Masterclass. I think it fills a market need that was not adequately covered before, or at least it's not been covered in a way that I'm going to cover it. So please consider coming to the first class in Houston. The classes will be small. They'll be maxed out at 20 people. So, of course, the first 20 who register and pay will be assured seats. For this first class, I'm partnering with Merrill Brink to bring this event to you, and I hope that you will find it useful. You will find it very important, and that if you can't attend from your company, that there may be others who can attend. I'm going to be able to offer group discounts if you want to bring more than one, so just let me know. Please shoot me an email or visit my website, Advanced Compliance Solutions, to learn more about it. This is Tom Fox, and I thank you very much for listening to this podcast. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox again. I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode of the FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report. I have two calls of action, and now I have three calls of action today. The first one is I would appreciate it if you go to iTunes and rate this podcast. It would certainly help us in our ratings with iTunes. Second of all, if I'm putting together my next mailbag episode for this podcast, so if you have any questions, please shoot them to me. You can shoot me an email at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. And for my third call to action, I hope you'll consider attending the FCPA Masterclass in Houston, Texas. The dates will be September 10th and September 11th. If you have any questions, please give me a call. Thank you very much.